Football coach Derek Alexander. Welcome to the show, DA. How are you?
Good, thank you.
We took a day off yesterday for Labor Day, so typically we will be live right here on the KCAC network, the Avila Sports Network, every Monday at this time, but this Monday was Labor Day, so took a day off, and we're here for this special Tuesday edition of the show, but life rolls on for you guys, DA. You suffered your first loss of the season at home this past weekend against Southwestern. Preseason, one of the strongest teams in the KCAC, and at least to me in the press box, they look to be one of the stronger teams that we're likely to see this year. What are your initial reactions to that game on Saturday morning?
Well, they're definitely a good team. Those guys came out, they were prepared, ready to play, and we kind of came out a little bit flat. So it was good for us to match up with them early, a top 15 team, top 20 matchup. But we kind of see where we're at right now. I know it's early in the season, but it's good to have that type of matchup early in the season just to kind of see where we are compared to those guys.
And I guess, you and I talked about last week on the first edition of the show that Bethany was an improved team this year compared to the last 3 or 4 seasons, frankly, but what was the adjustment like going from a team that was predicted to finish last in the KCAC in Bethany week 1 to a team that was predicted first in their division in Southwestern week 2?
It was a tough task for us. I think we came out, those guys were ready to play. Those guys were fired up. They were ready to play. We kind of got hit in the mouth early. They got up 21 on us in the first quarter, and then we kind of stumbled through the first half, came out in the second half, played a little bit better. Fourth quarter was a lot better for us. Those guys continued to fight, and we saw we could play with those guys. And I just think the early onslaught those guys put on us kind of got us down a little bit, and then we realized, hey, let's finish this game with some pride and I think, during the game, some of those guys started feeling sorry for themselves. Hey, these guys are better than us. And that was just the feeling that I got on the sideline. But eventually, those guys started to play. We started scoring some points. We started to stop them on defense. And then I think they kind of realized, hey, we can't play with these guys.
What do you think was the turning point? Because for the second straight game, we saw you guys fall behind in the first quarter, but then eventually rally in the game. And you guys were right in it at the very end against Southwestern, despite trailing big at 1 point.
Yeah, and that's the thing we have to fix. We've started slow the first 2 weeks. Starting slow against a good team, a top team in our conference, is what'll get you beat. So we've got to figure out a way. I've got to figure out a way to get these guys going early in the game and not trying to wait until, hey, let's pick it up a little bit. We need to be picked up from the start of the game.
But you guys did finish really strong, outscore them 22-0 in the fourth quarter, and it's not like they had taken every single starter out and completely taking the game for granted at that point. I don't really think there was much of that at all. You guys just started to find your groove as a team, it feels like. So what did you guys see in that fourth quarter on both sides of the ball, it feels like?
Well, I think, our defense realized that, hey, we got to stop the run. Those guys were running down our throats at the beginning of the game, and we kind of figured out a better defense to play to what they were running. Sure. I think in the first quarter we were kind of outcoached a little bit. Those guys were running plays right down the middle. We didn't have anybody there for them, or we were playing it wrong. But I think in the second half we kind of figured out what those guys were doing. We made the adjustment, and then we were able to come out and play a better second half.
I think the difference was pretty clear. They lead 21-0 after the first quarter. You beat them 22-0 in the fourth quarter, and after all that, it's an 8-point game. So really the difference is one touchdown in the middle 2 quarters. It was as close of a game, the final score, at least to us in the press box. It felt like that. Again, I realize it was a loss, and that's hard to swallow a lot of times. But I don't want to talk about moral victories at this point of the season, of course. But to me, it felt like not. I'll use this term, and I'll let you correct me if you'd like. Not a bad loss by any means at this point of the season.
Yeah, at this point, with the divisions, that helps us a lot.
Absolutely.
Where this game, it matters to us, but in the overall scheme of things, for us to be conference champions, this game kind of doesn't matter. It matters for us to become a better team, to play hard to see that, once we face a good team, what we need to do to be more competitive early in the games.
Let's flash back to the previous game one more time, because this was kind of late breaking news after you had joined us on the show this time last week. The conference announced its first slate of KCAC football players of the week, and senior defensive back Trayvon Miller was named defensive player of the week for his performance against Bethany. 2 drive-stopping late-game interceptions, over 120 return yards on those 2 interceptions. What can you say about what Trey did in that game?
So he played a great game. To seal that up with those interceptions and the yardage that he gained on those, helped us score some more points. I mean, getting us all the way back down to the other end of the field when those guys are driving like that is a huge bump for us offensively. I mean, if you've only got 35 yards to get to score points, that's a huge advantage for us. So Trey did a great job. He played a great game. He deserved to be the player of the week.
And then you get 2 players of the week in 2 weeks. Lorenzo Baptiste, freshman return man, special teams player of the week in the KCAC this week for his performance against Southwestern. And, frankly, special teams has been a big part of this program over the last couple of years. I know you can attest to that from your time here as an assistant. There was a time in Avila football where special teams was kind of an afterthought. But in the last 5 or 6 seasons, it feels like the return game especially has been a crucial part of this team's success. And it feels like to me what he did in the first half against Southwestern was a key reason why you guys were able to stick around.
Most definitely. Even in the first game, we were getting huge return yardage out of Lorenzo. And then we also got a punt return in the first game. In this game, now we get a kickoff return. So those are huge plays in the game. That's the hidden yardage that we need. If we can get great returns or get the ball out to the 40, the percentage goes up much higher for scoring opportunities for our offense. The more yards we can get on kickoff return or punt returns in that regard. But Lorenzo's done a great job for us these last 2 weeks. I think teams are probably going to start trying to kick it away from him now that they know that what he can do, but we'll figure out a way to get the ball in his hands, continue to have him be a threat for us.
I feel like it's got to be a numbers game to some extent because, mathematically it has to be easier for an offense to drive down the field, get into metaphorical field goal range, or hopefully score a touchdown if you're starting drives on the 40 or better versus a touchback or whatever you start on the 25. So it's got to be a lot easier to have a good return like that.
Yeah, it's, definitely. Starting on the 25, the percentage is way lower than getting those 2 first downs, essentially. Sure. If you can start on the 40, 45-yard line, now you've only got 50 yards to go, 55 yards to go, and that's much easier on the offense. And then also field position, whether you score or not, you can keep those guys backed up. It's harder for them to score. Then we get the ball back, and then hopefully we have the better field position to go ahead and eventually score.
Play the long game. I get that. Let's flash forward a little bit because life doesn't get a whole lot easier in this conference, which we expect to be really good this year. Friends is on tap next. It's a team that's not ranked in the NAIA right now, but they've done a lot of good things that I've seen over the first couple of weeks. So what can you tell us about the Falcons that you're getting ready for here in week 3?
It's going to be a tough team. Those guys have won their first 2 games, and they've been scoring a lot of points.
Sure.
So defensively, we have to be ready. They run a triple option offense or a flex bone, whatever it is. And those offenses are traditionally hard to stop because you just usually don't see those a lot. So it's very difficult to prepare for. So when those guys come out, I think they've only thrown 5 passes all season. So they're going to run the ball, and they've been very successful at doing it. So we've got to be stout on defense. And then offensively, we've got to score some points. We've got to put some points on the board to help our defense out because, that clock's going to be rolling. Those guys are going to be running, and if we keep our defense on the field for too long, they're eventually going to get worn down.
I guess it's not a secret what they do because this was kind of the expectation that we had kind of as the media, if you will, when Terry Harrison left Bethel and came over to Friends at the start of last year. Our guys, our veteran guys, are used to this because they saw it to an extent last year at Friends, and they saw it in full force the previous years at Bethel. Now, you'll have to refresh my memory. Were you did you overlap with Coach Harrison at Bethel at all? I think you did, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
my last season.
That's what I thought.
Those guys, and it was a tight game that we played. That was our first year in the KCAC, seeing that type of offense, and it was difficult for us to stop again. Luckily, we scored more points than they did in that game, and we ended up winning. But I know over the last few years, Bethel was a tough team for Avila to beat, or I believe they lost a few of those games.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be the same. Friends they've got a good team. Those guys are pretty solid, and we know what they're going to do. Can we stop it?
It's a bird battle. The Eagles against the Falcons this Saturday night in Wichita. Kickoff scheduled for 6 p.m. As always, you can watch that game live on the KCAC network. Coach Alexander, thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks.
We'll be right back with head volleyball coach Marilyn Mosina next on Eye on the Eagles. Welcome back to the first live episode of Eye on the Eagles in the 2023 school year. Tim Hackett now joined by one of the newest members of our staff, Assistant Athletic Director Boyd Pitkin. Boyd, welcome to the show and welcome to the team.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
We pivoted a little bit. We are live at Tanner's at Redbridge, so we're letting Coach Mosina eat her lunch before she joins us first. So Boyd was kind enough to join us instead of her and instead of Sean Sumi on the show this week. And I mean, I kind of gave the story away a little bit, Boyd, as to your title, Assistant Athletic Director. What can you tell me and our audience about what you know about your role here? It's officially a month in, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations! Congratulations,
one month.
First of all. I think congratulations are in order.
Well, depends on the day. But
depends on the day. So that really sums up the job, right?
Yeah,
It's compliance and operations. Yes.
Compliance, operation, eligibility, and game day, whatever else Sean has me do.
That sounds like my job description.
Yeah. I came into this knowing what part of it was, and and where Sean was going with what he needed to do as the athletic director, and it was to take some load off of his plate, is what I was trying to hired to do. To get some things away from him to where he could focus on going to other things for the athletic department. So I guess that's what my duties are. Whatever Sean tells me to do, I'll do.
And I think that really proves how valuable you are and how important he feels that this position is, but more specifically, how valuable you are to this position because, like you said, there were many things that he has done in his position kind of behind the scenes, many things that I don't even know. And you will now be asked to field a lot of that just to kind of make it a little bit more equitable for everybody.
Yeah, and having been in the NAI for, 30 years, I would think I have a little bit of experience in doing some of the things that he asked. So, I was comfortable coming and doing this position. I've always wanted to try to get into athletic administration, and when Sean gave me the call saying the job's open, put my application in and all that, and going through the process of meeting with the staff and administration at Avila. I thought it would be a great fit for myself, and I'm thankful for Sean giving me the opportunity.
We're glad to have you on the team. You're certainly no stranger to the NAIA, as you mentioned. So, close to 3 decades in various roles, most notably head baseball coach at Briarcliff University, a little ways north of here. What can you tell us about your experience in all of those roles and what you gained that you're bringing to the job here?
Well, I pretty much started at Briarcliff. I spent my last 3 years there, attending school. Jumped right from that into an assistant role in the baseball program. Took a 2-year stint at Mount Mercy College as the head coach. Came back to Briarcliff for an additional assistant and became the head coach in 1997 and left there in 2019. So my roles at Briarcliff were pretty close to the same things as I do here. I did operations. I did game day management. I did eligibility for the baseball team. So all the things that I've endured here, nothing has shocked me yet into what I'm not used to have done at Briarcliff. And, I enjoyed my time at Briarcliff, but it was time for me to do something new. Like I said, I wanted to get into athletic administration, so this was the right time and the right place.
Awesome. Well, it's something new, but something familiar as well. Like you said, it's to some extent roles that you are familiar with without having to be in a dugout all the time, I guess. I think it's a term that you certainly are familiar with, and our coaches and athletes, some more than others, are familiar with. But I think there may be some people watching who are unfamiliar with the term compliance. So can you tell us what that means as it pertains to college athletics?
Well, it's to make sure that all the programs and the athletic department are complying with the rules of the NAI, whether that be number of games, tournaments, whatever. My job Sean's still going to be doing some of that as well, but mainly my job would be to make sure that we don't violate any policies within the NAI to where we get in trouble.
Sure.
We don't want it. We don't want that.
Definitely not.
No. So that's the big thing as far as the compliance is concerned. And then I'm still learning. I'm thankful for Stephanie and Malcolm at Avila, who are teaching me some of the ropes that I did not know about eligibility, and they are walking me through a step-by-step process in this, and has made my job a little easier for them. I'm hoping to make their job a lot easier by being able to take a lot of this off their plate, because Malcolm is the FAR for the university. Stephanie is in registration, and they have a lot of other things to worry about, and I'm hoping to take a lot of that off their plate as well.
Yeah, you beat me to it. That's Stephanie Sullivan, assistant registrar, and Malcolm Gold, who is our faculty athletics rep, and those two are absolute rock stars. They're essential to what we are trying to do in college athletics, which is give our coaches the opportunity to coach and give our athletes the opportunity to play alongside being a student. And I think it's fair to say that I couldn't do my job, certainly, which is just kind of alongside everybody else, but we couldn't have this program in place without the work that the three of you and Sean do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew coming in what I wanted to get accomplished, and part of it was to alleviate responsibility of those two, but I also want to alleviate a lot off of the coaches.
Sure.
I want them to be able to do what they were hired to do, and that's to coach the teams that they were hired to coach. I don't want them to have to, if need be, I'll obviously have to go to them, but I don't want to have them worry about, I need to do this for LGB, I need to do that. That's my job. And having somebody do that and help alleviate some of the pressures off of them so they can focus on the task at hand is one of the main things that I wanted to get accomplished. And we're going to be setting some stuff up a little bit different. I got here right when school started.
Yeah.
Kind of a rough time to start eligibility. So there's some things that I'll put into place that'll make it a little bit easier for us, I hope, in the near future, to where the coaches and myself aren't going to be bogged down with last minute, need to do this, need to do that. Unfortunately, Malcolm did a great job, and Malcolm and Sean and Stephanie did a great job of getting us set up for the fall. And now my job is now to make sure we're set up for the winter and the spring sports.
I'm sure that the coaches are grateful for you for that, even if they don't necessarily know it yet. That's certainly going to be a massive help for them. You've got another side of the gig, I guess, helping with game day operations and making everything run once we actually get to games. So you do a lot of stuff behind the scene to make sure that those athletes are eligible to be out there, but then you're also doing a lot to make sure that the game is able to happen just from beginning to end. So you joined us for our first home football game of the year this past Saturday. How was that for you on that side of things? Hot?
It was a hot day, definitely. Long day. Since we moved the start time up to an 11:30 start,
Yeah.
that means getting into the office a little bit earlier than what I normally have in the past for football game days. But
Relatable?
yeah, it was very relatable. I mean, I'm used to those long days, whether I've been on the baseball field or game management at football. I did basketball at Briarcliff. I did wrestling at Briarcliff. I managed baseball. I wanted to do that myself, so it's no big deal to me. Not a huge issue going through long days like that.
Well, one football home game down, 5 more to go, right?
Yeah, and hopefully a little bit better outcome than this last one.
Yeah.
The team put in a great effort towards the end. Just came up obviously a little bit on the short end of the stick, but there's some good things within the program that the coach is doing, and he'll get this thing going in the right direction. There's no doubt about it.
We'll see them in action next this Saturday against Friends, and then they are back at home the following Saturday. So plenty more for us to do and a lot of more opportunities for us to see football, cheer, and dance at home at the Z coming up. 6 total home football game dates here this fall, most that we've had in quite a while, which is exciting in a lot of different facets. That's Assistant Athletic Director Boyd Pitkin. Thanks for joining us on the show, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And thanks for all you've done for us so far.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with our next coach. This is Eye on the Eagles. Welcome back to the first live edition of Eye on the Eagles in the 2023 season. We're here at Tanner's at Redbridge. Tim Hackett now joined by head volleyball coach Marilyn Mosina. Welcome, Coach Mo.
Thanks, Tim. Excited to be here again.
Normally I say welcome home after teams have been gone for a while, and you were certainly on the road all last week. But for you, I feel like welcome home is a tad misleading because actually you got to go home, truly home for you this past week, to Nebraska, your home state, to Bellevue, your alma mater. It's been kind of an annual tradition since you've been our head coach to go back to Bellevue. Has that been kind of the design for you? Has that been done on purpose?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of intentionality behind it. Obviously, yes, one perk is that's where I went to school, right? My homecoming, all of the things, a lot of family, a lot of friends get the opportunity to come out and watch us play. But also, too, the competition is unreal there. Just the teams that Trish brings into that tournament are next level. And, you know, that's kind of been my mindset with scheduling is how can we get some tough competition on the schedule. And so, yes, selfishly it is a benefit for me getting to go home, see my family and all of that. But also there is some intentionality behind it with just the level of play that we get to play.
I think that's all, and that's clearly borne out over the last couple of years. You guys played at Bellevue your first year here 2 seasons ago, and then you were part of the Bellevue tournament last season, and then part of their Labor Day Classic again this season. And I mean, I didn't get to see every point of every set, but to me, just from looking at the games and looking at the box scores, what you just said clearly rings true. There are a lot of quality teams out there,
right,
and even plenty more quality teams that you didn't even play. So it just feels like that's there are many tournaments like that happen every weekend at this time of year, sure, but it feels like that one specifically, there's a lot of talent from all over the place.
Yeah, yep, very much so. We started out Thursday. We played Our Lady of the Lakes University out of Texas, and, you know, they're receiving votes. So it was a tough matchup right away to start the weekend, which was cool. It was, you know, I keep telling the girls it's a test, right? We're being tested every day. Every game day of what are we capable of and who's going to show up and what performance are we going to put on. And so, yeah, we started set one really well against Our Lady of the Lakes. We actually had a pretty decent lead, and then when crunch time came, just kind of folded a little bit, and so ended up losing set one 25-23. And then set two and set three were, again, pretty competitive, but, again, we get to a certain point in the game where we can't finish. And that's something we're working on. So it was a great start into the weekend, but really special because this tournament is traditionally played at the Lead Center in Bellevue. So we're not traditionally on BU's campus. Okay. And so on Thursday, because there were only 2 games, us and Our Lady of the Lake, and then Bellevue University and Doane played after us. So with that, we got the opportunity to actually be at Gordon, which is our home location, their home court, as Sean would tell me. It's no longer ours.
You're still part of it.
Yeah, right, but theirs. So that was really special. It was really cool. There was a lot of people I got to see. I saw my old basketball coaches and got to see our old trainers. Actually, a GA, when I played there, she works for BU now, so she works somewhere within campus, and so I got to see Caitlin, and then obviously I have a really good relationship with one of our vice presidents, Russ, and that was a surprise, and so it was really cool. It was, it was fun from that aspect of things, but also just brought back a lot of memories and, yeah, kind of heartstrings to, again, like we talked last week, kind of where my roots were and all of that. So
I think that's awesome. I got to experience that a little bit too, and I won't tell this long story because this is about you, but it was fun for me. I was just a few months out of college, but my alma mater, Northwestern, played at Duke, and that was where I was living back at home in North Carolina, and so I went to that game. It was a women's basketball game in December, I think, so I got to see a number of my former colleagues. Some of my former radio broadcasters were there covering the game. It was at Cameron Indoor, place that I've been a handful of times in my life, things like that. So it was just kind of a cool little callback, I guess, for me, even though it hadn't been all that long since I had been part of it myself. Right. It was cool, since I wasn't part of that anymore, to see all those people who were still part of it, either as players or whatever else the role is, kind of moving on as I also started to move on in my life. And it was cool to just kind of come back to that environment for a little bit.
Right, yeah. It's really special. And then obviously, too, all the family and friends that got to be there as well was pretty cool. So
I always love in events like this. Now, pivoting back to you, and I've talked about this with Paul Wolf from bowling and Charlie Kennedy with softball, but the other sports that get to travel and play a lot of teams, you get to take on a lot of teams that Avila Volleyball has never played before or never played in recorded history, so the last 15-plus years, maybe even never. So Our Lady of the Lake from Texas, Dickinson State from North Dakota. It's fascinating. Valley City State. Like, these are all schools that we don't get to play in anything, and then you get to see all three of those teams firsthand, and then also you get to see Benedictine, which is a school about an hour north of here that you get to travel 3+ hours to go play. So I love how all of those things always work out. You get to see a lot of teams that you've never seen before, and then also a local foe out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool. That's for sure. Like I said, just the diversity of talent that we're getting to see, but also getting to watch, right? So not only who we're playing, but like you said, it's just a rich talent. A lot of teams that are ranked in the poll, and a lot of teams that are receiving votes, and then there's teams that aren't, that are upsetting those teams, which is really cool. Obviously, we had one of those teams that, at our last day, Valley City, they upset Ottawa, who was, I think, 22 in the polls, and Valley City wasn't even receiving votes. And so we got the opportunity day 3 to play a team like that, right? That comes off of, an upset from somebody in our conference who we know is tough competition day or year in and year out for us. And so it was kind of like, again, just another cool challenge for us. By day 3, we were exhausted.
I bet.
Obviously day 2 was a lot for us. We had a 5-set thriller against Benedictine, which brought a lot of emotions, highs and lows. I mean, set 1 and set 2 were not our prettiest volleyball, but super proud of the girls, because the message going into set 3 was, hey, you've got one of 2 options. Either you're going to buckle down here and you're going to play volleyball like you know how to play volleyball, and we're going to try and reverse sweep this team, or you're going to tuck your tails and you're going to run, right? And that's on you. Like, what are you going to do? This is your challenge. How are you going to approach it? And I was super proud of them, right? Like, it would have been so easy. Tuck our tails and, hey, we'll get in, get out, get swept. But we fought and we fought and we fought. And then, unfortunately, set 5, we just dug ourselves too much into a hole early on. It was like 6-1 right off the bat, and ended up coming back and losing 15-12. And so that was right away at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. that Friday. And then we've got another match at 7 p.m. With Dickinson State, who, proud of our girls, right, lose to Benedictine, but came out really strong against Dickinson State, had a really, really, really great game. I think we hit 361. And when you hit 361, anybody that knows volleyball, like, that's a good night. That is a good night in volleyball. You win a lot of games if you hit that consistently, which was cool to see, right? We haven't hit that yet this season. And so, again, just what we're capable of. And again, Dickinson State wasn't an easy team by any means. We just played our best volleyball for 3 straight sets, which was cool. And so yeah, to then turn around Saturday, obviously had a long day on Friday, and then Saturday we played at 9 a.m. and played Valley City, a really tough team that honestly I wouldn't be surprised if they hit the receiving votes at least, right, at some point within the next couple of weeks with the polls. And so it was a lot of volleyball, but it was good for us, right? It was a good test of, hey, how in shape are we? How much better do we need to be in shape wise, right? All of those things. But yeah, it was a long weekend, but the thing I keep coming back to is, like I said last week, right? A lot of highs and a lot of lows, a lot of really great things that we need to keep doing, but also a lot of things that we need to just keep growing on and just keep fine tuning and tweaking and perfecting a little bit. So yeah, super proud of our girls. It was a good weekend. Again, this whole season, it's going to be a lot of that because we are so young.
And it doesn't slow down for you at all, because you get a little bit of some time off, I guess, at the start of this week, but then a busy end of the week this week, just like last week, at Stevens College on Thursday, and then up to Morningside for a try against Morningside and Jamestown on Saturday. So really quickly, high level, what can you tell us about any of those 3 teams? We've seen all of them recently. We saw Stevens the last couple of years. You're going to be at their place this year, and then you guys were at Morningside for a try this time last year as well. So familiar-ish competition, I guess, at this point. Right.
Yeah, so Thursday, Stevens, they, I don't know what to expect. They have a new coach. Their coach from last year moved on to the Division I level, and so they have a new coach. So I don't know exactly what to expect. I think it's not going to be a walk in the park by any means. We're going to have to show up and be playing our best volleyball. But I think it's more of a competitive level for us, right? That's kind of at our level. So that's exciting. And then, Morningside and Jamestown it'll be, again, just tough competition, right? And, that was the biggest thing I talked to Sean a lot about after looking at our schedule was we just created a lot of opportunities this non-con type time frame in the season with really tough competition, right? Because we know the level that we have in our conference. And so how can we go level up, right? How can we level up in the non-con schedule so that when it comes time to conference, we're ready. We're not shocked by anything because honestly, it would have been really easy to go schedule a super easy non-con week or non-con preseason of, 6 or 7 matches that we could have caked walked, won all of them, been, 7-0. But what's that doing for us, right? And that's my mentality is building a program, and in doing that, we have to be willing to play the hard teams. And so Morningside, again, more our competitive level last year anyways. Again, I don't know a ton about them this year. But Jamestown, they're coming off of winning the national championship.
Right.
So, they did lose quite a bit. So they're, rebuilding as well. But again, a program, you just won a national championship.
Sure.
You know how to win. And obviously those girls that are returning were the practice players for all those kids that played in the national championship, right? So there's some experience there. And so it's going to be a really, really, really tough match, but how exciting, right? I just keep telling the girls, opportunities like this you don't get every day. And so we really need to capitalize on them and really just play the game we know how to play.
I didn't even think about it like that because it's literally not every day that a team gets to face the reigning national champions in any sport, and that is an opportunity that you guys get to have this weekend. Which, again, they're not in our conference, so unlikely to see them otherwise.
Yes.
And unless one of the teams in our conference does win the national championship in anything, it's statistically unlikely that any of our teams would play the reigning national champion in anything. So the fact that you guys get to do that. I don't care how challenging or how easy the match could potentially be.
Right.
It's a unique opportunity that really doesn't happen very often.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that will come up this Saturday. Morningside try against the reigning national champs, Jimmy's and Morningside Mustangs. That's Saturday. And first, the Eagles will travel east into the state of Missouri to face off against Stevens College on Thursday night. You can find details on how to watch and follow along on our website, avalaathletics.com. Coach Mill, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tim.
Avila volleyball back in action with 3 more matches this week. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back on Eye on the Eagles. Welcome back to the Eye on the Eagles show. Tim Hackett now joined by head men's soccer coach Robert Kelly. Coach Kelly, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And welcome back in. I know it was a late night, relatively speaking, for you guys last night. Just played at Benedictine last night on Monday. We're shooting this live on Tuesday, the day after Labor Day here at Tanner's. Before we talk about that game, though, congratulations are in order to you guys. You picked up your first win of the season last week against Park. So a little while ago at this point, but how does that feel?
It feels great. Honestly, it's been a long time since we've even gotten the opportunity to beat Park. It's been a long time since that's happened, so it was nice to have that happen, and the boys did a really, really good job working as a whole to earn that win for themselves.
I think that's a great point. It's something that I didn't even really register to me until a little bit after the match, but this was a team that you guys lost to 4-1 last year, and that was a late goal from Malcolm Goswell to even make it that final scoreline. So Park was in control, I think, for much of the match, but you guys reversed that script this time last week, and you were in control for the entire match. And before we talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of the match itself, how much does that say about what you're doing, what the team is like, anything like that, to 12 months later flip around a 4-1 scoreline into a 2-1 win?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long process, right? It's been 3 years in the making. Guys finally getting on the same page, wanting to work together and do things together as a team, and it's shown. Quality across the board has gotten better, so we just continue to grow from there.
I thought everything about your team's performance last week was impressive, and we've talked a lot, you and I, even off air, about results not necessarily reflecting the performance or the quality that your team produces. And this time, I thought you did get a result that you guys deserved, because especially defensively, I mean, just as good as I've seen this season for sure, top to bottom. I was just super impressed with what I saw from everybody that was on that side of the field for you guys.
Yeah, we had probably 3 or 4 defenders make 3 or 4 blocks in the game off of shots. I mean, Park outshot us. I think it was like 20-6 or something like that. But a lot of those shots were blocked by our defenders, and when they did go through, John was there to make some pretty good saves.
I thought, John Fager, new starting goalkeeper this year. I figured we'd talk a lot about him, not just this week, but on a lot of weeks, because I said it even live on broadcasts last year. I was impressed by what I saw from him in a reserve role behind Naguib Nasir, who was deservedly the starting goalkeeper last year, but he kind of joined the team out of nowhere around this time last year, talking about John, and gave you a legitimate number 2, and now with Naguib graduating, you've now got him as your legitimate number 1, it feels like to me. And there are always questions for every team, for me as an outsider, wondering, what's the offense going to look like? All this stuff. What's the back line going to look like? But for me, I didn't have too many concerns about the goalkeeping position because of what I saw in limited action from John last year. So what can you tell us about what you saw from him last year and how the confidence that gave you to bring him into this season as your number 1?
Yeah, so I mean, he did well whenever he got in with Naguib being out or him just earning that time over the season. This year, I think he's stepped up and kind of taken his own, and is really starting to show what he really has, even more than he does in the past year. So
he had 8 saves, season high against Park last week in the win. 7 saves just last night on Monday against Benedictine, which we'll talk more about in a second. But I mean, even as the goalkeeper apologist in the room here, I think we certainly know that almost every time a goalkeeper is very little without his or her defense. And again, just across the board, the defense that you guys played last week against Park was impressive. I distinctly remember Damon Young clearing a shot off the line. I thought Jesse Simpson and Alex Roy have both looked really solid as center backs this year. List goes on. You finally got Jonathan Young in the mix over the last couple of games as an outside back, so you feel as if your defense is starting to kind of come together, I guess, in terms of the personnel?
Yeah, I would say we're definitely coming together. We're definitely deeper than we have been in the past. We have, I would say, 4 or 5 outside backs that are rearing and ready to go, that are getting quality minutes in and putting in good effort during the games.
I guess I didn't even talk about Ko'o, who had he made the second goal against Park happen and the broadcast was very congratulatory of him, and I love to see that. His credit was credit where credit was due, because Sam scores the goal, Sam Conda scores the goal, and obviously marks to him for doing that. But that goal specifically doesn't happen without the setup play from Robbie Davies, and then specifically from that, the transition game from Coe, and he got an assist on that goal, which doesn't always happen. Don't always get a secondary assist in your sport. He did get one on that goal and was well-deserved. I thought the transition game that he played, especially in that second half, was impressive.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, without him starting that attack, him playing the gritty defense that he does, made a couple of really good tackles, and then really put in a hard one to make sure that we got through in to Robbie, and then ended up putting it in the back of the net.
And Coe does almost the exact same thing, almost leads offense for himself a week later on Monday night against Benedictine, end-to-end. Don't necessarily see that from an individual player in soccer all the time, but he makes a play on the defensive end, clears a shot off the line behind John, and then moments later, it's him that's in on a clean break up the left flank and brings a shot off the crossbar. Very nearly went in. I mean, again, I can't think of how many times I've seen something like that in soccer, literally end-to-end with one player. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was really exciting. Again, I think the second half was a lot better from us against Benedictine. The quality of defense, our organization, everything, the grittiness that we have with us trying to get those blocks off the line and helping each other out is what we're looking for, and it led us to then him being able to go forward. Honestly, I was already celebrating when the ball left his foot, and was shocked when it ended up going off the crossbar and not going in. So, but it's good to see our defenders and outside backs getting in the attack more and helping us going forward.
And the goal last night was scored by not a defender, but by a central midfielder, not necessarily a guy who's known for scoring goals, I guess. The goals against Park, Vinny Escott and Sam Conda, two guys that you would count on to produce offense, but TJ Mickelson, the goal scorer against Benedictine, awesome interception on a failed clearance, and he just blasts a shot from well over top of the box. A highlight reel goal to be sure, and just an awesome moment for a guy like that.
Yeah, it was great seeing him score. I think he's going to continue to do stuff like that as long as he gets those opportunities. He's probably been one of our most consistent players over the past 3 years. And I think he's going to continue to do well.
I thought it's just awesome to see him out there, because he was barely able to play last year due to injury, and you get him back. He's a senior leader for you. Like you said, he's been a mainstay at that position when he's been out there over the last few years, and to see him rewarded for a goal, yeah, is awesome. But, I mean, for me, I don't know what it's like as a coach, and maybe not the same as for him as a player, but just for me, seeing a guy like that literally just be able to be out there, not just be out there, but contribute at a high level like he always does, that's just – it's edifying for me. It's got to be rewarding for you guys as well.
Yeah, it is. It's nice seeing him come in and give us that leadership and show his calmness whenever he gets on the ball, whenever we play.
And now you guys have a little bit of time off before you play again. That was your last scheduled non-conference game against Benedictine. Now you've got 10 days off before the start of conference play midweek next week. First of all, how does that feel, knowing you get a little bit of a break from games? Because I know it's just kind of fast and furious for a little bit there.
Yeah, it's good to get this little break so that, one, we can regroup as a team, get ready for conference play, along with making sure that if we have any lingering injuries, stuff like that, we have a week and a half to make sure that people are ready and healthy to go for conference play.
And that starts off next week against Evangel. We'll talk a little bit more about that matchup specifically next week on the show. But, I mean, what is your, I guess, game plan? What is your plan for yourself and for the team over this weekend, knowing you don't have to worry about games, which obviously we know are fun and what you're looking forward to, but there's a lot of work and there's a lot of stress and taxation that goes with it. So you don't have to worry about that side of things until next Wednesday. So what are you guys planning to do with that quote-unquote time off?
Just watch film, go over kind of the things that we didn't do well in some of the games, like the beginning of Benedictine game, the first half wasn't our best, right? I mean, it showed in the score line at the end of half, but we made adjustments so we can go over that stuff and really kind of refine what we're looking to do heading into the conference play.
Well, Avila men's soccer will head into conference play with a win in its back pocket, courtesy of that 2-1 victory against Park in Parkville last week. First victory over the Pirates in recent program history. An impressive overall performance from Coach Kelly's squad. Evangel is the first KCAC opponent on tap next Wednesday at the Z, 4:30, your start time after the women kick us off at 2 o'clock. We'll talk more about that next week, but that is something to look forward to. Conference play or bust for our soccer teams after this week. Coach Kelly, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back after this. You're watching Eye on the Eagles. Welcome back to the first live edition of Eye on the Eagles in the 2023 season. Tim Hackett now joined by head women's soccer coach Katie LaForge. Coach Katie, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Our final guest of our first real edition of the show this season. Coach, you guys coming off of a trip to Park last week. First of all, I didn't get the chance to ask Robert this question, but I'm always curious about this. Something that you and I saw a couple of years ago was the conscious move of teams changing up the order of the doubleheaders occasionally. Schools, I should say, changing up the order of a doubleheader, because almost always women play first, men play second. I'm sure you're used to that to an extent, but Park switched it up and had the men play first and the women play second. Does that change anything in your pregame itinerary, game plan, or anything like that, or does it not really matter all that much?
I think it does matter for us because it was something we were not used to. So it was definitely, it affected the itinerary of how we were going to come into the area, I guess you could say, because it's not far for us, obviously, right. But we had, a pre-match meal together, and so it was nice to have a close away game so that you can kind of get those game day vibes flowing a little bit quicker and be more conscious of that. So, yeah, the itinerary definitely changed. It was that particular evening. It wasn't incredibly hot for the men's game, but we're used to playing in that, and the men are not necessarily used to it because they typically have that second slot. Sure. So that was kind of nice. It was nice. I do think it can kind of build up the nerves as far as you're waiting, and then, obviously watching your counterparts play, and obviously it was a great result for them. So, emotions were high and excited, and so that was a positive. But I do know that there was one other time that I can remember very clearly that a few years ago when we went to Oklahoma Wesleyan and the men played first. So typically we try to at least watch and support, right? Again, our counterparts, we travel with them all the time and we want them to do well. But that particular game, which I'm sure we never really want to talk about again.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that particular game, we did not watch as much as we had hoped to because the emotion of the game and the trajectory of the game was very detrimental to the Avila side, and so we didn't want to take that on as the second team to go. So yeah, there's an interesting I thought about that as we were watching that day, because again, we're not used to being in that position usually. Like, we get on the field, the field's ours, we dictate when when we get there, all that stuff. So but the girls enjoyed it. Is kind of like a headliner moment, right? Sure. And again, we don't get to see that as often. So, and it was nice because we actually had the ability to have fans there a little bit more than normal, because again, the 5 o'clock slot or 5:30 is tough for sometimes people to get off work and stuff. So, and obviously being local was nice to have people there. So yeah, it was definitely different.
I think it's such an interesting way of thinking about things, because maybe this is selfish, maybe this is the non-athlete in me that's thinking about this, but I always feel like in a perfect world, none of that stuff would matter necessarily, but that's not, and what I mean by that is that any team is going to be able to play against any opponent at any time, in any location, whatever, and you'll be able to play the same way that you would expect to regardless. In a vacuum, I feel like that would be how that should be, but yes. We don't live or operate or play in a vacuum, so those type of things do have some kind of impact, I think, right from hearing what you said. And I guess part of your task is to try to ameliorate, to try to lessen that sort of impact, good or bad, as much as possible, so that you can execute the game plan that you guys have established.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and ultimately we want to see all Avila sports do well. So, even there's been a couple times where another sport has been at that particular university at the same time. I think football was there one time, and they had actually, I think they played earlier in the day. Sure. They had like an afternoon game, and then we were coming on, and football had won. So it was like, positive. Same thing, I think, at St. Mary one time we had that as well. So yeah, it does affect it more than you might think initially, right? When you're making the itinerary weeks before, you're not thinking, all right, how do we make sure? You just got to kind of feel the waves, feel the vibes, and just do your best to make sure that everybody can be as focused as possible on what we're trying to do.
Let's talk about the game a little bit specifically at Park last week. Honestly, in terms of game script, it felt kind of similar to the previous game against Dorton. Go down 2-0, you score a goal to get right back, and then they score a goal late to kind of salt it away, I guess.
Yeah.
3-1 final, and obviously there are a lot of different things in there, but at the end of the day, kind of a similar storyline to get to the same results.
It is. So that has been a discussion amongst the coaches, I'm sure, with the players as well. But trying not to get too caught up on past results, right, and letting them bleed into other ones unless it's in the positive sense. So we, again, like you said, just have, I think, some interest. And I think the subbing rules affect us as well in the first half. So the rules, for those who don't know, is once you exit the half in the first half, you cannot return. So you can make one re-entry in the second half. So if you say you start, you come out, you can go back in, and then that second time you leave the field, you cannot go back in. So there is a very conscious effort as coaches, and I'm assuming players as well, as they mentally prepare, that you'll probably have a longer stint on the field if you're starting, and that's the hope, right? But it is a matter of getting the formation correct, getting the right combination of people on the field, so that first part of the game you don't dig yourself a hole. But it seems that we are digging a few holes, and the good part is we're showing resilience and being able to come back and make it. They say that worst lead in soccer is 2-0. So, we don't let it get out of hand, but for the players, it's tough to watch them go through that, especially like twice in a row, essentially, when knowing full well they are capable and should have more winning in their favor and not digging of holes. So, it took away a little bit of one of our freshmen scored her first collegiate goal, and it's just a bummer that it's now tied to a loss. So for her, I was trying to celebrate her and excited for her, and it was a great moment. But how can we be in the, again, not we set our shovels aside and we actually just keep on level playing ground. So that's the question that we keep asking ourselves. So we continue to work on it, and we get another opportunity tomorrow.
Yeah, got time to figure that out. You actually, perfect segue, because that is something that I wanted to make sure that we talked about, is your freshman Nikki Wood scoring her first collegiate goal, something that she is very used to doing, scored over 100 goals in her high school career, and now gets on the board in college. She very nearly scored in her first college game against Culver Stockton, very nearly missed out twice, and now here she is a couple of weeks later scoring another goal off a set piece for you guys, which is impressive, off a Megan Nugent corner. And for me, it was I'm sure, like what you just said, makes it even more obvious that meant a lot to you and to the team, and Shirley, for her to get on the score sheet in her career.
Absolutely. As forwards, I think they carry around a very large monkey of taking full-on responsibility of scoring goals. And ultimately, there's only so much our goalkeepers can do, our back line can do. Obviously, our midfield puts in a lot of work, but that responsibility lies a lot on them. So I'd love to look up statistically the last time we scored off of a corner, like a one-time directly off the corner, not a rebound, something like that. That would be an interesting thing to know, because in my short memory, it may have been one of my first 2 years would be the last time I think that has happened. So, again, she's used to it. She's used to scoring goals. So I'm really happy for her to be able to maybe just be a little bit more relaxed when she plays and not feel as much pressure that, okay, she's got that one, and now hopefully it'll just, hopefully as a team in general, we take on this mentality of, all right, we're getting there, we're about over the edge, and then hopefully the goals just start coming. I
feel like that's something that I've definitely heard a lot from forwards, is that the adage is first cuts the deepest, and first goal is often the hardest, especially if it's the first after a while, or in her case, the first ever as a college player.
Absolutely.
I hear players get in slumps. In your sport, maybe it's 3 or 5 games. In hockey, maybe it's 10 games because there's just more in the season. But if you haven't scored in a while, then once you finally do, it feels that much better, and you feel more confident, comfortable, and capable of scoring more in the future.
Absolutely. And a big piece of the puzzle for, I think, Yeah, I would just say athletes in general is confidence.
Sure.
So if you can get into a good mindset and a good, good space where you're feeling confident, your teammates have confidence in you as well, your coaches have confidence in you, you can't go wrong.
We've got it. I have to talk to you about the goalkeepers because, as we know, this is the only thing that I know anything significant about in this sport. But in all reality, I feel as if you guys have a good problem to have because on the outside, it feels like a legitimate goalkeeping battle, which is not something that you have had since we've been together. You have done a good job of playing multiple goalkeepers more than many other teams do. Like, when Madison Baker was here, Abby Newig still got a couple of starts. For example, Kennan's first year when Baker was out or unavailable, Kennan got some work as a freshman. So you do a better job of other coaches of that. But this year it's not all right, we've got a backup that we're going to get some work. You've got two legitimate goalkeepers that are fighting, at least to me, for that number one spot. And it seems as if every game, one of them does something really, really well, and it makes it really difficult to decide where you're going to go from here. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100% fair. I would say some of the biggest – I think one of the biggest and best qualities of my particular – program in this year is that we have a lot of really good coaches. So I do like to have them take on quite a bit of responsibility and see as myself not being a goalkeeper at any time in my life, probably maybe when I was tiny, but I have to ask my dad about that one, my mom. But I place a lot of the technical side of things when it comes to goalkeeping on our goalkeeper guru. I call her my guru, Kaylin Williams, because one, she herself has played at a high level. She's been in the environment where there is a battle, but also very much a camaraderie with the goalkeepers that it's really difficult to explain because they're ultra competitive with each other, but they are a gang. Like, they are together. They are on the same. They always root for each other because 9 times out of 10 when you do practice sessions, you've got the entire team versus the goalkeeper.
Sure.
It's rare that the goalkeeper,
faces off directly.
Yes, absolutely. So they get this, bond together that's pretty special, first and foremost, and then it's just hard to understand if you haven't lived it out yourself. So I do place a lot of the, that her being able to tell me what's going to be the best, how are we going to handle this best, because like you said, it's a great problem to have, but I know especially if the goalkeepers we are speaking about are listening, it's got to be a little bit brutal in some ways as far as making mistakes. How do you make sure you mentally rebound from that, not only for your team but also for this battle that is going on between you and your partner in crime,
Sure.
essentially, at practice. So I rely on Kaylin a lot to help me feel out that. Ultimately, the decision is mine. We came to a good understanding, especially with the way in which Kennan has been with us and the way that Olivia came to us a little bit unconventionally. But we wanted to give both very clear cut opportunities and things that they could mentally prepare for. And again, I think you said it as well, like both have shown in different games their strengths, and obviously in the most recent thinking, I think both were ridiculously good on breakaways. Olivia had some pretty outstanding saves in the park game, as far as getting up into those upper regions of the goal when shots were taken. So both were very much have been instilling fear in the opponent, and that's really what I'm after. I like to try to solve the problems way ahead of the field before they get to the goalkeeper,
Sure.
But it's nice to have goalkeepers that will do that for you. So, yeah, we came to the agreement that it would be, most of our non-cons, we would try to get them both a half and trade out a little bit with the starting. But, I mean, I won't lie, when we said that, after the performance Olivia put in the first half of Park, it was tough to not give that to her to have her play the rest of the game. I mean, that's the level that she played at that time. But I think, again, there's this bond between her and Kenan, Olivia and Kenan, and Kaylin as well. They have this bond, and they have this understanding that, things are going to happen. But, I think ultimately, hopefully, they both felt very valued and respected and needed. And we needed them because we're going to need both of them this season.
Sure.
That's really the ultimate goal here. But I think once we start getting going, I don't know what the rest of it looks like. But we got one more game to sort it out. So,
is there an option that they both could continue this role going forward?
Yeah, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit in the offices last week. That we've experienced other KCAC teams doing such a thing,
and they do it well.
Yeah. And I think, again, coming to an understanding and making sure that everyone's on the same page with it, but I don't know if it's something, I don't know. We'll see. Neither of them are seniors. So that's the other hard part too, is like, this isn't just a this season problem that we're going to have. So how does it look in the long term and the trajectory of where we want the program to go? So, but yeah, ultimately that is definitely on the table.
I love that you bring that up, and we'll talk more about this later, but that is something that we learned when we were preparing for Dordt to come here. This is on the men's side, but they have a pair of goalkeepers who are seniors this year who have been competing against each other, like you just said, but against each other, but also with each other for their entire careers. And it was pretty much a 55-45 split for them last year. I think one of them started 12 games, the other one started 9, something like that. And so they were dead even. They've been dead even their whole careers.
Oh, wow.
And last year it worked very well for Dordt on the men's side. They both played very well. So, and like you said, we have seen on the women's side in the KCAC a number of teams, Southwestern is the one that springs most readily to mind, employ that 50-50 split, really kind of even going a step further than what Dordt did, and have somebody start every game and then have a different player come in and finish every game. And that was pretty much how they operated the entire season. And that season, 2 or 3 years ago now for Southwestern, it went very well, and they did not concede a lot of goals.
That's
so
true.
It appears to me to be a potential viable strategy if you look at case studies from other teams. It has worked before.
Yes, absolutely. That's, again, there's no playbook, I guess, for how to do this. So we are letting the chips fall where they may, I suppose, at this point. So, but again, we have a great problem. Both of them are doing very well, and both are showing their strengths. And Kaylin, I think, can attest to this a little bit better because she sees them a little bit more in those little moments. But she, has been working on them with certain things to help boost their areas that need some improvement. And she says both have shown in games, when the pressure's on, that they are taking what they're learning in practice and applying it to games. And again, making it more difficult. So maybe it's a testament really to the coaching that they're getting and their coachability as well. Being able to take those things on and not being, too big for your britches and accept the criticism, the feedback, those things, and really put in the work to do better. So,
and I think what you've said over this conversation means it's clear to me that this is a better problem to have than perhaps others, because it's not a goalkeeper battle because you've got 2 or maybe more that you're like, well, we got to have somebody out there. Can't not have a goalkeeper, so may as well just throw somebody out there. It's not the case. These are both high-level players who are both playing very well, and they're playing at the same level so that it's hard to find any way to differentiate them. So,
correct.
I mean, we'll talk more about this as we go on this year, but the old adage in American football is that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0. But it feels as if you have 2 goalkeepers, and that means you have 2 goalkeepers. They're 2 legitimate players, and it's not, it's been hard to decipher, to differentiate between those 2 because they themselves, with some help from the coaching, they are making it hard for you because of their play.
Indeed.
Well, there's one more game in non-conference at least, to maybe suss some more things out before conference play kicks off in earnest next week. It's Benedictine on tap on Wednesday night. This is a team we've seen a lot over the last couple of years. This has been a very good team over the last couple of years. So in a few seconds, I guess, what can you tell us about what you can expect from the Ravens here in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lincoln always puts together a good, hardworking group of young women, a very large one as well. So, they have a lot of spice and feistiness to them, just from their bench alone. So going to their place is always an interesting place to be in general, as far as, going into someone else's home. So, we always feel those effects, I guess you could say. So that to me has been pretty consistent. And I have coached a couple of these girls on the Benedictine team over the summer in the semi-pro league, so have a little bit of insider information on them in particular. But no, they've always got a pretty high level way of doing things, and they have high standards for themselves. So, even when things aren't going great, you always see a battle. So, I think it was 2 years ago now when we definitely gave them a run for their money, and they were highly ranked at the moment. Yeah. So, I do know that they respect their opponents every time. Very. I have almost never seen them not take somebody seriously. So that is something that I think is a good quality to have in a team, is that when they throw on the jersey and they go to work. So we're in for a fun battle of a game. It's always good to play teams that, I ultimately, lose recruits to. So it's an in-town battle kind of. So, we're fishing in the same pond as far as talent and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, it's a very similar style, I guess, tactically to what we're used to, and the way that they approach things. It's early in the season, so it's hard to see if there's any major standouts yet. But I do know they've had a lot of turnover recently as far as seniors and stuff like that. So some fresh faces, some different ones as well, with the goalkeeping. So yeah, it'll be a good test for us. How do we respond? And going into, like I said, someone else's home, and how do we respond to a team that is very, they're used to battle. They're used to getting, and they want to be, top ranked in the nation, and that's our goal as well. So the only way that we're ever going to know where we actually sit is to measure ourselves against the best. So Benedictine's always been one of those that I like to do that too. So yeah, we'll just see how tomorrow goes.
Well, the Eagles will get that opportunity. Will be another bird battle, Eagles against Ravens. This 2023 edition of Avila versus Benedictine, Wednesday night in Atchison. Kickoff scheduled for 7:30. Before conference play starts off in earnest next week at the Z against Evangel next Wednesday afternoon. As always, you can find out ways on how to watch and follow along by going to our website, avilaathletics.com. Coach LaForge, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tim.
That's going to do it for this edition, the first live edition of Eye on the Eagles here in 2023. Thank you very much to Tanners at Red Ridge for hosting. Thank you to executive producer Darian Miner for all his help getting all of this up and running. And for all of us here at Avila Athletics, I've been Tim Hackett. We'll see you next time, back on Monday morning, same time, same channel, 11:30 a.m., live from Tanners here on the Avila Sports Network for Eye on the Eagles starting next week. We'll see you next time. Until then, so long from Tanners at Red Ridge.